Oink. Oh, there we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily, and I'm the young adult librarian at the Rock Island Public Library. And today I have two books for you that are both available through our Boundless app, formerly known as Access 360. And this first is Big Tree by Brian Selznick. And in this book, you meet two people. Well, they're people, but not human people. And starts in typical Brian Selznick fashion. This is a mix of words and illustrations. So you get a lot of beautiful art, but also you get the story of a brother and sister. And they live in the very far past, millions and millions of years ago. I think like 66 million years ago. And in fact, they are still seeds. They live in a seed ball, and they're still with their mom, who is this giant sycamore tree. And the thing that has happened is, one morning, Louise, she is a seed, she wakes up and wants to know what her brother sees, because she faces inside the seed ball and can't see out. And her brother Merwin faces out. So Louise, she is the sister, Merwin is the brother, and this is where they begin. This is where their story starts. But it doesn't last too long. We see this is their original home. And after this introduction to Louise and Merwin and their family, we don't meet any of their other siblings, but we meet their Mama, and she is able, being a tree, to kind of have an understanding of what is going on in other parts of the forest. And so she knows from what are called the ambassadors. These are mushrooms, neither plants nor animals. And what we know now about mushrooms is they can communicate with each other, but also other life, namely trees. There are these vast networks. And gets into it in a little section at the back of the book. This is, I'm going to attempt this word, it is mycorrhizal fungi. And we've known about this since the 19th century, but it was Dr. Suzanne Simard in 1997 discovered the connection between these fungi and trees in the forest in a kind of underground internet system, now called the Wood Wide Web. So, from the ambassadors, the trees of the forest learn that there is a giant coming. And the giant is, in fact, a dinosaur. I think it's a Titanosaurus. It's just huge. This is one of maybe the biggest dinosaur that ever existed. And the thing that happens is, the trees are missed. This dinosaur walks on by. And at first, the question is, well, okay, why did the ambassadors miss this? Well, that's because they've been getting some strange messages. There's something going on, and no one's quite sure what. And meanwhile, Louise and Merwin are talking because Louise has been having these dreams about a voice. And Merwin tries to tell her, like, hey, it's just a dream, but Louise is convinced, no, I think I need to listen to this voice. I think whatever it's talking about, it's important. And so their mom has already told them that seeds, they need two things, well, technically three, but they start life with wings and roots. And what that means is when they leave the seed ball, and this happens pretty early on in the book. Actually, chapter 4 is Roots and Wings. They go flying. And what they're doing is, in leaving Mama, well, they fly, and what they're looking for is a safe place to grow up. So they actually need three things, and that's water, sunlight, and dirt. And Merwin knows this, and Louise kind of does too. Like, she in first kind of taking this journey, they begin knowing what they're supposed to be looking for, but they don't always recognize immediately that, okay, we're in a new place, and they're kind of just being blown around by the wind at first. But they land at one point, and Louise thinks, hey, this is like a little island. We could grow here. There's lots of sun, and there's lots of water. And Merwin's like, okay, but I don't think there's any dirt. And sure enough, there's not, because of what they found is not an island. It is, in fact, a plesiosaur. So after this, they end up in the ocean. And again, Louise is like, well, hey, there's water, and I mean, there's sort of sand down here. But Merwin's like, no, this is too much water, we can't grow here. And they end up meeting other creatures, like the microorganisms that live inside seashells. And for Merwin, this is a surprise, because he has always thought that only plants can talk. Like, that's the thing he says several times in the book. Like, well, only plants can talk. But then there are these things that aren't plants, and they're not animals, but they can talk. And all of these, I will say some of these things, some of these creatures they encounter, for the most part, they're not dangerous to the seeds, but they're not exactly helpful either. Because, I mean, these are just two seeds sort of on their own, and they don't have anybody who can help them. They're just sort of at the mercy of the weather and wherever they end up next. So when they are able to get out of the water, like I think the tide comes in, they're able to get back to shore, and they encounter other plants, and eventually they find a lacewing, which is like an ancient ancestor of butterflies. And so they're able to kind of figure out, oh, well, okay, this thing can fly. Maybe if we ride this thing as she is flying, they name her Spot. Well, Louise does. Merwin is not sure about this at first, but then he thinks, oh, Mama wanted us to grow someplace safe. I bet that's the beautiful mountain that I could see from the seed ball. We just need to get there. But Louise is not so sure because, again, she's had these dreams, and in her dreams there is something dangerous lurking around this mountain. And the book is the story of these two seeds and how they end up, like, at one point, they're sort of riding on this little creature accidentally, and on Spot, they almost get eaten by a bird, and there's just a lot of trials and travails they have to go through, again, on this journey as tiny seeds just trying to find a place to grow. And this is a quote from something. I will look in the back and see if I can find it. But the idea is, this book, it was written in part because, oh, here we go. It's a hard world for little things. And this is a quote, sort of an homage to Lillian Gish in The Night of the Hunter. And this is an old movie about two children alone and adrift in a world besieged by dangers. And in the book we learn, this is back in the back, in sort of the acknowledgments and explanation of things in the book and also how it was written. The author was working on a screenplay for this story, and then as 2020 happened, decided, oh, you know, I really want to keep working on this, but I think now it should be a book and not a movie. And so that's where this book came from. And as always, Brian Selznick's art is fantastic. You will get just a really kind of different story than what he's told before, I would say. Like, yeah, the first three books, that's The Invention of Hugo Cabret, and then we had Wonderstruck and The Marvels. And they're kind of a trilogy linking, I mean, different times, different places, but all of them are about different human children struggling to sort of find safety or a home and not always knowing where to look for that. So this is a similar story, but this time the kids aren't humans. They are sycamore seeds. And I really enjoyed this. I will just show you, if you've never read a book by Brian Selznick. It varies. Like, there will be pages where you get primarily art. There's a lot of illustrations, pages and pages that kind of set the scene for where you are and what's going on. And you might get, like, just words here and there. I think these are great for kids who maybe they've not read a lot of, like, books this thick. Like, I think when you see a book this thick and you've never read something like that before, you might think, oh wow, that's going to take me forever to finish. But no, in the case of Brian Selznick, you will see that no, the story goes quite fast because you want to know what happens, and you're getting some pages that are full text, but for the most part, that's not what you're getting. You're getting art that tells the story. And I always think any story like this where you're not having to use words all the time, where you're, in many cases, just telling your story through images, that's always really cool to me. So check this out. And I think as an ebook, I'm not sure. Like, I like being able to flip back and forth, but this is one of those where you can follow the whole story. You can go back if you want to see the art again. But yeah, it's a book that is both like just a wonderful mix of words and artwork. And yeah, if you're looking for kind of a different sort of story. A story about, like, I guess, nature and the world, but also how the world is going to be fine whatever happens. It's survived worse things than humans, but if humans want to continue living the way we have, then we need to be conscious of the effect we have on the world. So, check it out. Get a little glare there. And next, this book is the first in a trilogy. This is The Golden Compass. And I book talked this years ago, but this is one of those where it's like, if it's been 3 or 4 years, I'm going to bring it again, in part because the HBO series has wrapped up. There were 3 seasons of this, and they adapted all 3 books. So technically, this is a book talk. I'm just mainly going to talk about book 1, but if you go to Boundless, you can get The Golden Compass, and The Subtle Knife, and The Amber Spyglass. So this time of year, with the weather being what it is, I mean, it's a good time to start a series or continue one. And in this book, you meet a girl whose name is Lyra. And she lives in a world like ours, but different. Namely, that it is a world where human beings have a physical, like, representation of part of their soul. And these are daemons. They're animal familiars. And the whole time you're a kid, your daemon can change. They can change into any animal. And Lyra is used to the place where she lives. This is Oxford College. And she has no parents. She, as far as she knows, her only guardian, her only family, is her uncle, Lord Asriel. And he is often gone. He travels a lot. And at the start of this book, Lyra knows that he's coming back from a trip to the North Pole. And Lyra and her daemon, Pantalaimon, they decide, well, Pan is reluctant, but Lyra thinks it would be really funny if they hid in the coat closet in the room where her uncle is going to give a speech about what he saw at the North Pole and what he did, all of his findings. So they hide in this closet. They're hiding amongst the coats, and nobody can see them. And Lyra and Pan watch as somebody comes into the room, and like different things that her uncle's going to talk about as part of his speech are brought in. So these are different items that he has either purchased from the indigenous peoples at the North Pole or found. In one very important case, this is a found item, and it's inside a box. And this wooden box is placed next to the podium. And on the podium, sort of, somebody has like a decanter of wine, and that is put down. And then this person who thinks they're alone in the room because they don't see Lyra or Pan, what they do is they take this little packet out of a pocket. It's just like a little paper, folded piece of paper. And they open it, and they put some powder in the wine. And Lyra sees this and thinks, huh, that's interesting. And something I will say, like, I read this book first a long time ago. I was a little older than Lyra, but something I like, you especially get it in this first book when she is pretty young still. Like, by the end of the series, she's almost an adult. But in this first book, Lyra, I mean, she acts like a kid because she is a kid. I think some books, sometimes kids will act like small adults, but that's not the case here. In this case, Lyra is kind of curious about what might happen if she lets her uncle drink this wine. Because she's thinking, well, I've never seen anybody get poisoned before. Like, will he just fall over dead? Will he throw up a bunch? Like, I don't know. I kind of want to see what might happen. But Pan is right there, and it's like, no, we have to tell it. We have to say something. So they wait. They wait and watch as this person who has poisoned the wine leaves the room with their daemon. And eventually, Lord Asriel, Lyra's uncle, comes in. And he's with his daemon, and they're sort of checking out the room, like, okay, here's the box. This is a very important box for my speech. And Lyra's uncle pours himself some wine, swirls his glass a little bit, and he's just about to take a drink when Lyra jumps out of the closet and says, no, don't drink that. Well, at first, her uncle is just kind of pissed off. Pissed or ticked. I forget. I think both words are considered, like, yeah, this is light swearing, but if I do this at school, kids are, oh, it's like, yeah, but he's really mad. This is the kind of person he is. Like, why are you hiding in a closet? Get over here. Stop messing around. And Lyra says, look, I was hiding because we were going to jump out and scare you. Thought it'd be funny, and it would have been, but somebody put something in your wine, and I don't know what it was. So Lyra's uncle thinks, oh, okay, well, I mean, he takes the glass of wine, he like pours it into a potted plant. And by this time, he can hear people, Lyra and Pan, and everybody in this room. Now, there's the sounds of people coming down the hall. They're coming into this room for the speech. So Lyra's uncle says, get back in the closet. I want you to say after the fact if anybody freaks out that I don't fall over dead during my speech. But I'm not going to cover for you. If you get caught, just be quiet. Just sit there and don't move. So Lyra and Pan are back to hiding in the coat closet. And the thing of this is, in this particular case, for this speech, nobody needs to use the coat closet. Like, Lyra's plan really relied on her uncle hanging up a coat and being the only person to hang up a coat, because the rest of the people who come to this room, they are scholars. They are like professors at Oxford. And they're just coming, not even from a different building necessarily. They've gathered here, and Lyra's uncle says, welcome, thank you for coming. Found a lot of interesting stuff at the Arctic, and I've done a lot of research. You know, I've spent time there, I've talked to the indigenous people, and there's some interesting things going on. And Lyra's uncle talks a little bit about just different things that he has found. And the scholars in the room, I mean, they're interested, but they've kind of heard this before. Like, this is not the first time they have heard their colleague talk about the North Pole. But something that gets everybody interested is the fact that there used to be another scholar who was very interested in the study of the Earth's magnetic poles. And Lyra's uncle mentions the fact that, yeah, we obviously haven't seen or heard from this person in many years. And there's been some questions about where he went and whatever happened to him. Well, now I know. That's the good news. On this trip, I found out where our colleague disappeared to. And it's at this point that Lyra's uncle opens the box next to him on the podium. And inside this box is a man's severed head. Now, it's not just a skull, it's basically mummified. So you can see there's still like skin, there's kind of like some hair stuck to the scalp. And Lyra's uncle says, okay, so the head was removed after death. This isn't how he died. If you look at the skull, examine this, you can see that yes, it was mummified by the cold, but top of the skull, there's a hole. Now, I wouldn't blame you for thinking, okay, that must be how this man died. But no, if you look closer, you can see that it was kind of starting to heal over, like the skin around this hole was healing. And that's how we know that this is something that happened while he was still alive. And now I know that our colleague, this was a voluntary procedure that he took part in. It's a thing called trepanning. And trepanning is something that has happened in different parts of the world, in different times and places, for different reasons. And, I mean, by the way, when I read about this as a young person, it was like, whoa, what? Like, why would people do this? But this is a real thing. Like, in our world, too, people have done this. And long before there was brain surgery, I mean, this is something that could save somebody's life. If they had swelling of the brain, hey, a hole in the head, that could relieve the pressure and save your life. But for the most part, this was done for different cultural reasons, different times and places. And that's true in this world, too. And in this case, what is believed is that this hole will let in a substance called dust. Now, this is very important to Lyra's uncle. He has been studying this, and his understanding is that dust is something that we can measure, we can study. It's part of the makeup of the universe. And not just our universe. What I believe is there are other worlds than these, other universes. And because of the way the Earth's magnetic poles work, at the North Pole, there might be a way to open a portal. There might be a way to find a gateway. If we can just see it, if we can just find it, we can get to another universe. So, it's at this point, like Lyra's uncle, he's asking for more money. He wants more money to continue his study of this weird phenomena that's happening in the Arctic and study dust. Well, I mean, Lyra, she was all interested in the severed head stuff, but eventually she falls asleep in the closet because this is boring. Finally, though, her uncle shakes her awake, like, hey, what did you see? And she is able to point out a couple people, like everyone's left the room, but she says, oh, well, this scholar and this scholar, they were kind of like whispering in the back frantically, and maybe they were surprised you didn't die. So Lyra's uncle says, all right, good, go to bed. And Lyra's like, well, wait a minute, I want to go to the North Pole. This sounds really interesting. Like, the next time you go, take me with you. And Lyra's uncle, being the kind caregiver that he is, the kind guardian that he is, he's not. He just says, no, go to bed. So Lyra, good news for her, in this book, she does get to go to the North Pole. Now, this ends up being a very dangerous journey, and it isn't exactly under the circumstances she might have preferred, because something Lyra finds in this first book is that she is not an orphan. Both of her parents are, in fact, still alive. That's the good news. The bad news is they are both very much embroiled in the study of dust. And in the world in which this book is taking place, the church is very powerful, and the church, it's the Catholic Church, basically. They have a lot of questions and a lot of issues with this kind of study and this idea of other worlds and how children are connected. And so just because Lyra is the daughter of two people who are part of this, that doesn't mean that she is safe. So, really good series. I mean, this is one I've not, like, this book actually came out when the movie did, and I will say that movie from 2007, that was a really well-cast bad movie. Like, I like the casting choices they made, but yeah, it wasn't a good movie. HBO series, it seems to be a much more faithful adaptation. They actually got to do all 3 books, which is great. So, looking for a new series. This one is sci-fi, fantasy. It's just something that I enjoyed as a young person, and I was able to kind of read it as I aged and also like as Lyra was growing up too. So that was a lot of fun. So if you like fantasy or just want to give this a try, check it out. And again, both of these books are available through our Boundless app. Big Tree just came out last year, so there might be a little bit of a wait for it, but yeah, check these out. And thank you for watching. I will see you again next Tuesday.